I, dear fellow, you are well known that I am a student of under CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, under the CSI, অর্থাৎ সেন্টার ফর ইন্টেলিজেন্স স্টাডিজ, যে কেউ ফ্রি অফ কস্টে পড়া যায়। ওখানে আর্কাইভ আছে, লাইব্রেরি আছে, বিভিন্ন স্টোরিজ। তো লাস্ট আপডেটেড স্টোরিজটা অনেকদিন পর, সেটা হচ্ছে এই যে রানিং 13ই এপ্রিল 2026 সালে, এটা আপডেটেড। তো স্টোরিটা আমি একটু তোমাদের তোদের পড়ে শোনাই। ইভ ইভি ইভ অফ রেভলিউশন, দ্য বোস্টন মেকানিক্স অ্যান্ড দ্য লিজেন্ডারি মিডনাইট রাইট, dated April 13, 2026. The time was about 10 o'clock at night, April 18, 1775. A Boston silversmith named Paul Reverie rode across the Charles River to Charlestown, ম্যাসাচুসেটস, অর্থাৎ চার্লস রিভার পার হয়ে চার্লসটাউনে পৌঁছালেন ম্যাসাচুসেটসের। স্টেলথ স্টেলথ ওয়াজ অফ দ্য এসেন্স। He slipped past a British warship under the cover of darkness and arrived safely on the other side. ব্রিটিশদের টহল বা পাহারা থাকা সত্ত্বেও সে যে কোনোভাবে অপর সাইডে যে পৌঁছায়। Earlier that evening, a patriot leader had given Reverie and another messenger separately an urgent mission right to Lexington and Concord, and warned that the British troops were on the march to arrest patriots and seize colonial militia stockpiles. First of all, you needed to tell Charlestown patriots to look for a signal of the steeple of Old North Church in Boston. There would be on lantern, ওই যে চার্চের উপরে যে ইয়ে থাকে lantern, or two, depending on whether the redcoats were marching by land or crossing the river. Now Reverie was reaching out of the town on horseback, মানে ঘোড়ায় চড়ে ব্যাক করলো। He narrowly avoided capture by British patrols more than once, but remained undertreated. He awakened residents inside their homes along the way, bearing the ominous news, the regulars are coming. সে তাদের সবাইকে জাগাইলো যে রেগুলার্স আর কামিং, জাস্ট এটা সংকেতের মাধ্যমে যে মাস্ট ওয়াক আপ রেডি। Reverie arrived in Lexington just after midnight and delivered the message to the Patriot leaders, joined by William Dawes. After riding a separate northern route, the pair continued toward Concord, and where threatened, joined by fellow rider Samuel Prescott. Shortly after leaving Lexington, British troops intercepted the three riders. তিনজন রাইডারকে ধরলো। While Prescott and Davis escaped, দুজন পালাইতে পারলো। Reverie was detained. রেভারিকে ডিটেইন করলো, ধরলো, কোশ্চেন করলো এবং তাকে আবার সাইডেও দিল। Without his horse. A fablet right immortalized in poetry nearly a century later. Point to be noted. A fablet right immortalized in poetry nearly a century later. অর্থাৎ ১০০ বছর পূর্বে কোন একটা কবিতায় সেম জিনিসটা প্রতিফলিত হয়েছিল বা ১০০ বছর পরে এসে কবিতার সেই জিনিসটা বাস্তবে প্রতিফলিত হয়েছে। কি সেটা? লিসেন মাই চিলড্রেন অ্যান্ড ইউ শ্যাল হেয়ার অফ দ্য মিড নাইট রাইট অফ পল রিভারি। কি লিখছিল? হেনরি ওয়াটসওয়ার্থ লংফেলো দ্য মিড নাইট রাইট অফ পল রিভারি। কবে লিখছিল? 1861 অর্থাৎ 1861। The first American intelligence network on record was a secret group in Boston known as the Liberty Boys, and more memorable, the Mechanics. It was an apt nickname for the skilled artisans and tradesmen who could fix anything while moonlighting as spies. One could say that the mechanics are the spy arm of a political organization called the Sons of Liberty, famous for dumping a ship load of tea into the Boston harbor in 1773 to protest British taxation without colonial representation. Increasingly, draconian British policies to oppress the colonies were enacted. Fort Reverie was born in Boston in 1735, became a silversmith by trade, and served as a courier before he undertook the most famous tactical earning in US history. He was a participant in the Boston Tea Party. He was a participant in the Boston Tea Party and member of the Mechanics. This network of spies was responsible for organizing resistance to British rule, carrying out the occasional sabotage operation against the occupiers, and reporting on redcoat activities. According to the referee, the mechanics came together for the purpose of gaining every intelligence on the movement of the Tories. We frequently took turns, two and two. We frequently took turns, two and two, to watch the British soldiers by patrolling the streets all night. Although the mechanics honored their spycraft in Boston, that security practices were not refined. For instance, they regularly meet at the same location, the Green Dragon Tavern, to share information, and one of their leaders turned out to be a British informant. Fortunately, the mechanics tapped multiple intelligence sources, which ultimately alerted the Patriots to the British plan. On April 19th, on 1775, the Americans were ready to fight thanks to the Patriots who sounded the alarm the night before, when 700 British regulars arrived in Lexington around dawn. Some on the identity remains unknown, fired the first shot, later known as the shoot heard, heard around the world, later known as পরে জানা গেল যে the shoot heard round the world. After a short skirmish, the far outnumber Minutemen fell back and the British marched on to Concord. By then, the colonies had relocated the courses of missions the British expected to find. In Concord, hundreds of militia reinforcements engaged the enemy in filtering casualties on both sides as the redcoats retreated to their garrison in Boston. They were harried along the entire route by militia from neighboring towns. By the day's end, the British suffered roughly 70 killed. By the day's end, the British suffered roughly 70 killed, about 1/10 of the force that had set out, and many more wounded অর্থাৎ আহত. It was a decisive, it was a decisive early victory for the colonial rebels in the first test of freedom. Without the good intelligence work of the mechanics and the warning delivered by Paul Reverie and his fellow riders, the poignant, poignant opening shoot and the whole conflict might have unfolded quite differently. And the whole conflict might have unfolded quite differently. Thank you so much.